the use of pleasure, the history, and that's just a claim, of sexuality. Maybe that's just a claim. Michel Foucault. Foucault. Pardon me for cussing in French. But first, let's talk about
the CBC.
Ooh.
Can we talk about the CBC?
Yeah,
first?
let's talk about it.
Okay. So we were, well, James was driving me to do some laundry in his house. And,
our laundry, right?
Yeah.
I just want to make that clear that you weren't going to
What?
just do my laundry.
No, actually, this load I'm doing dog beds.
Well, there we go. It's for our laundry. It's for our dog.
And your socks.
And my socks.
Which should be fine with the dog.
Yeah. Well, they should be plenty of fun.
Anyway.
I presume you put a lot of bleach in.
I put a lot of detergent.
Oh, okay.
Anyway. Oh boy, that wind.
I'm afraid that it's going to flip the burgers, you know.
Yeah.
Flip right on the deck.
So anyway, CBC, we're riding in the car and we're listening to this story, and it's all sad music and stuff. They're talking about the COVID. They're like, oh, when we're dealing with the COVID, and then it turns out we're dealing with another pandemic sort of problem. You know, there's so many lives being lost to drug overdoses.
Yeah. So
it was in 2021. It was a record year for drug overdoses in British Columbia, and there needs to be something that's done to stop this problem. And they interviewed this guy who's talking about he's a drug user, and he's talking about, oh, I don't even want to think about all my friends that have died, yet he's still doing drugs.
Yeah. And when people are doing drugs, especially the hard drugs like what they're talking about, they don't care about anything, not even themselves. It's that worm inside that has to keep on eating the drugs.
It's the addiction.
That's all they think about.
So you're listening to this and you're like, okay, so they're trying to sell me on this drug problem with COVID. They're trying to use COVID to pimping COVID out.
Yep.
For this, to sell me on this drug problem. And then it turns out that's not actually what they're trying to sell you. The story continues, and they're like, what it is that they're trying to sell you on is legalizing, it's a policy change. They're wanting to legalize people being able to hold a little bit of drugs.
Possession of small amounts.
Yeah.
Is the way they would put it.
Now, you might be asking yourself after listening to this, even with all the heart pulling, string pulling music, you know, heartstring pulling music and stuff like that, you might be thinking, okay, how is legalizing people carrying drugs so they can carry more drugs around, presumably, and not get in trouble for it? How does this prevent them from clogging, like they interviewed one woman at like a hospital worker at emergency talking about sometimes on her shift they'll see the same drug user in multiple times, you know, just in one shift.
Twice,
yeah. And so these people are clogging up the emergency rooms in times of a pandemic when people are dying from there was a story about cancer. So a patient, her surgery was pushed off so long that her cancer metastasized, and now she's dying. So they sent her home. You know, it's like,
what they're saying is,
you may as well enjoy your last time.
Enjoy life at home.
After you've been neglected
they wouldn't take her anyway at the hospital.
Exactly.
Wow.
So,
and I don't think her relatives will necessarily be enjoying handling palliative care for this person.
The home care people, they don't. What they can do is they come in and they say, "What's your pain level
What's your level of pain?"
Yeah, that's it.
And
10.
They go. Oh, there we go.
Okay,
Nothing I'm
that's
gonna
nice.
do about that.
So really, it's the family. Until you've dealt with it, you don't know. You have this assumption that you're paying into to support a healthcare system. You have this assumption that when you're dying, the healthcare system will take care of you. No, That's your family.
It's-
Your loved
yeah,
ones will
it's-
be changing your diapers for you. Your loved ones will be washing the crap off you. Everything. Your loved
The
ones.
bedding.
That
They
is
will
who
be moving you in the bed to the
Yeah.
healthcare nurses.
That's-
Yeah.
you're doing it all. The loved ones. That's who does it. The home care, they will push off the care onto you. It used to be that you'd get care within the hospitals. No, they kick you out to be cared for.
So Pauline's
by
seen
your
it
loved ones.
twice
So that
with her
is-
dad and with me.
So it's not going to be aggressive personality types who are doing the actual home care of people dying. No. That is amiable personality types who are going to be caring for people who are dying, and they're not getting paid for it. And they're having to do it while they're struggling to work at their low-paying jobs.
Pay their income tax to pay the home careless workers or no care workers or whatever they should really be doing. Sorry.
Well, mostly what you are being taxed to fund is aggressive personality types. Some of the home care workers are very nice, amiable people that are working really hard to try to, but they're not getting a lot of money to do the work. And do they really want to be cleaning up, say, diarrhea off some stranger and washing the diarrhea sheets? No, they don't. That's going to go to the family. They don't want to do it. They're not getting paid very much to do it.
No, we're talking about the
care.
actual workers, not the nurses.
Not the nurses. I'm talking about home care. Anyway.
Well, what do they call the nurses? Don't they call them home care?
Well, I don't know. Like my aunt was doing home care, and she's not a nurse.
Yeah, exactly right. There's the two different types. Right?
So yeah, there's
nurses are the ones that do nothing. They'll just ask
they'll
what's
do
your
nothing.
level of pain.
So anyway, because they tend to be aggressive personality types, they tend to be the aggressive propagandists, the nurses, and they some are
aggressive
rulers, yeah. But anyway, the whole system. So you're going back to the drug thing. We're thinking about the drug issue, all these people clogging up emergency, Okay, so who is paying for all of these people to clog up emergency and this and that? And why are we being sold on the fact that these guys should be allowed to carry some more drugs, and somehow that will make them live? I mean, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever, right? So really,
at best, it's a red herring.
So the aggressive propagandists they didn't do a very good job on this news piece, because it doesn't even make sense. If you try to connect the dots, you're like, how is that going to help? It's not. So really, the push is to keep more drug money flowing in the system. And then people can make contributions to various not-for-profit organizations, say, that help like legalized injection sites and stuff like that, right? And so people who are making the drug money real in the system, business owners who are really legalized drug dealers, who are then contributing to not-for-profits, the whole system is rigged so that the passive personality types are being squeezed, all the life energy out of them, all the dollars out of them, all the working energy, to take care of aggressive personality types. And when you look at the Liberal Party, they tend to favor the aggressive propagandist. So those are the people who end up putting themselves into positions where they're managing not-for-profit organizations and stuff, and they're collecting huge amounts of money. They're giving themselves huge wages so that they can look like they're altruistic, when in fact they are not. They are only out to benefit themselves, and they are using other people's money, not only drug dealers' money in terms of contributions to not-for-profits, but yours, amiable people, passive personality types are being
Workers.
used so that they can collect huge management dollars for themselves. And that's really what it comes down to. Is they look at these issues like drug use, and they try to sell you on it that you need to care for these drug users. You know how you care for those drug users? You care for them as small children. You make sure that your small children are loved, and then they don't turn into drug users. You make sure that they have a parent at home with them, caring for them, providing good meals, providing loving, nurturing environment for children. And a limited number of children, because if you have too many, the nurturer is just too tired. Even if they're a wonderful caregiver, they can't apportion that much care to many children. So what you do is you make sure you have a family unit. You encourage family units to actually love children. So that's not aggressive personality types to have children. You encourage passive personality types to have children and care for them. That is it. Then you stop this drug problem, and you stop the false advertising of aggressive propagandists by aggressive propagandists of using all of these other platforms of care, which they don't care. They don't care. They're setting themselves in positions so that they can take. They do not care about whatever. It could be little helpless doggies and little helpless people and whatever. They don't care. They do not. They are users. That's all they're doing. I'm taking the whole time.
They're on stage all the time, and they're not satisfied until they upstage everyone. Okay? So Pauline mentioned that they show all the signs of being altruistic, but they're not altruistic. Not altruistic. Not altruistic. The point is there. And I wanted to point out, Pauline came up with a pretty good metaphor for what they were doing. COVID continues as a lead into this story about fentanyl overdoses and stuff like that. She called it pimping COVID out for this. I have another metaphor. Hers is plenty good. Hopefully mine is pretty good.
It's peanut butter?
It's what's called
sure? I made it for you.
what is it? A lost leader or something like that? You advertise something. It's bait and switch, right? You bait someone with someone. Hey, your ears perk up, COVID, and then you switch over to fentanyl crisis or something like that. No, I think it should be made clear that we're the conservatives. Basically, their base is aggressive, not propagandists, but aggressive ruler types.
Yeah.
Those are the people that pay their bills.
So they benefit the aggressive rulers.
Yeah. So we're not on their side.
We're not on their side either.
In many ways, I prefer the aggressive propagandists.
At least their lies are somewhat entertaining.
Exactly right. Exactly right. But they end up in Madison Avenue and stuff like that. They are used by the aggressive rulers and stuff like that. But there are many different types of aggressive rulers. How about the NDP? Who do they represent? They represent a whole huge whack of aggressive propagandists. They themselves are aggressive propagandists, but they've got a whole constituency. They don't tell the Marxists, get lost. They don't tell the anarchists, get lost. I shouldn't have to tell you that those are, like the capitalists, certainly worse. They are aggressive ruler types. And the anarchists don't like rulers, well, aside from themselves. They believe in direct action. Like get out there and you just decide. Forget about that voting shit stuff. Forget about that. You just decide. It's your conscience. You go out there and kill someone or whatever.
Hey, just a minute.
So at bait and switch or pimping out. So what do Pauline and I think we're roughly on the same wavelength, the same page when it comes to how should this fentanyl crisis be? Okay. Fentanyl, all these sorts of drugs should be on...
That's just on the short term. The long term, I told you
I
how.
know. Yeah. It's just how do you get people to do that? You've got a friend, a longtime friend, who or former friend or something like that, friend when you were young, who you saw it. You knew both generations. And you saw what happened. I've got an acquaintance like that. One of her kids ended up being a junkie. So it should be treated as these things should be treated as pharmaceuticals. There should be a prescription for fentanyl, for maybe not for marijuana. That's people don't get hooked on it. It shouldn't be a medical problem. But the opioids, cocaine, methamphetamines, stuff like that.
They need to have separate pharmacies.
Yeah, separate pharmacies.
Where they're just, you get a prescription, you go get your dose at the pharmacy. You take it right there.
Yeah, take it right there.
And
So that's a supervised, hopefully not
you're
an
chauffeured,
overconsumption
basically.
site.
You're chauffeured back to your home.
Chauffeured, or you get into a bus. It's a separate bus and stuff like that.
And you don't have the same medical. You don't go to emergency for drug overdose.
No. You go to a supervised
That's
consumption
handled there.
site. It wouldn't be an overconsumption site because you'd be given the exact dose that you're supposed to get, and there would be emergency type facilities right on site. So folks wouldn't have to be gumming up ambulances, gumming up emergency rooms, and stuff like that. And again, when we're talking about it being a pharmaceutical with a prescription, it would be dispersed for free, right? Dispensed for free. So you cut the pushers out of the equation, and being a pusher, well, that would be a serious felony.
Because really, ultimately, how you stop the problem is you stop creating people who will become drug users.
Yep.
So, really, you stop creating people that don't feel loved when they're little kids, people who are neglected when they're really little. That's how you stop the problem.
I'm afraid that's where so much of it comes from. So in terms of homeless use and people dying under bridges and stuff like that, I gather in the United States there really is a legitimate homeless problem. People be trying to get into a shelter overnight. I don't know if that's so much a problem here in Canada. I'm sure there's overcrowding and stuff like that, but there are just a lot of people apparently who like living out on their own. And if they do that, that's on them.
And
So if there is a crisis, a housing crisis, I'm not talking about a homeless crisis. That's different. People, if there is housing for them and they don't exercise that option, that's on them. But if there is a shortage, then let's pump it up. Frankly, I think there should be homeless shelters, not just for people overnight, but particularly here in Canada. I mean, this is a mild day for this time of year. You don't want to be out and about. So it should be a 24-hour homeless shelter. In other words, there's a place where you go to sleep, and then after about 12 hours, you move into a place during the day, or less than 12
and they
hours.
have whatever they
you
need.
clean
You
the
know, they have
places,
the
stuff like that.
computers there for them
Computers.
to use internet. 'Cause
They don't have to come
They
and
don't have to go to the
gum up the
library
library
and
and stuff like that.
they don't want to be
Not
at the
wear
library
masks
anyway.
and so on and
Yeah.
so forth. Or get aggressive with the guards, or have their overdoses there, and have little kids exposed to people being dragged out by their underwear. I've seen that, by their pants, and it's coming off of their bums, because they're refusing to go out.
It's
or
a
they
great
can't go out.
environment for children
Yeah,
now,
wow.
to bring your children to the library with the drug users. But anyway, yeah, just that's all I really wanted to point out, was that amiable people need to band together and say that's enough. We're tired of taking care of all of the aggressive people in society
And their
and their offspring forever, because you're always taking the aggressive propagandists, their children forever. They're damaged children. You can't help them. They're going to keep being damaged children.
And,
So
they're
and
so
children
big.
take a lot of energy. When they're big, you can't handle that.
You can't.
That is way too
They're-
much energy.
They're not just damaged, and they are damaging.
Yeah.
They can do amazing damage.
Yeah.
And of course, the aggressive rulers, they're like Stalin. He was beaten by his shoemaker father. I think his dad was a shoemaker or something like that. That's not his last name. It's something like Jewish villain, just in case you misunderstand. Schumacher, it wasn't that. Okay, so he was beaten by his father. It was horrible, brutal stuff. And as a result, he ended up being a brutal adult.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's, maybe Hitler was.
And I mean,
worse.
people, there's
That's
aggressive propagandists. They'll say, "Oh well, I'm so good to my child. See how I love them." You know, and they're always doing it in front of people. You know, it's just a show. It's look at me, love my child. Look at me, look at me. That's all they're doing. So.
But when there's not an audience there for them,
then the kids
my
being
child,
neglected.
where? I don't
where
really
are
give
they?
a flop.
So, anyway, you have to start to, when you're an amiable person, you have to start to recognize aggressive propagandists. They are not you. They're not, a lot of amiable people think, oh, they're like me, only stronger. They're, they're the me I would like to be, so I wouldn't put up with crap ultimately from people like them. They are using you.
They say all the right lines, like, we care about people of color, we care about working class people, we care about women, we care about this, that, and the other thing. They don't, the environment, they don't care at all.
Ultimately, they don't even care about themselves.
Many of them don't.
They're so damaged that they ultimately they don't. They're very selfish about
whatever worm is inside.
But
they let the worm inside them, whatever it is. I'm afraid it is a medical condition, right?
Yeah, well,
but
sure. I mean, they didn't receive the love when they were young.
No.
And so, because of that, they will never feel it. They don't understand love. They can't love.
And so, they look at people, they're angling at, how can I use this person?
All right, well, you have about 7 minutes to talk about your Foucault.
Well, I'm going to just kind of introduce it.
Okay.
So, the use of pleasure, the history of sexuality, I should have said volume 2. So hopefully, volume 1, he actually dealt with all the stuff that was he was supposed to deal with. But it's just, he does admit in here, I'm no Hellenist and I'm no Latinist. No spit. And I want it recorded that I put a P in there, spit, okay? And it was an S, not an SH. But, so there's a fair number of sources. Hey, dude, history of sexuality. If you're going to do history, you got to control the sources. So there's all sorts of things in the background, in the back of this book, bibliography. Translated. Doesn't count. If you're going to be doing Latin and Greek sources, you got to be able to control the source. What does that mean? You got to be able to use those languages. Now, he's talking about being the history of sexuality. What is it? It's the classical philosophers, and then it's the medieval philosophers. He doesn't even seem to realize that there were Stoics and Epicureans who were kind of like in between the classical philosophers and the Christian philosophers. But this is the trouble. And you notice something? And then he moves into modern times. Hold on a second. Christian philosophers, classic philosophy, Greek, Latin, everything's taken place in Europe and its extensions. United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. And then, well, he's got France too. Huh? Like Germany as well. But that's all Europe, and basically Western European stuff. Like after the Greeks, he's not dealing with Byzantine stuff. Newsflash to all you idiots who think that this guy's a profound philosopher. Philosopher means lover of wisdom. He's a misosopher. He's a hater of wisdom. Get it straight. I know one professor, well, some of the PhD, was telling me, like his thesis was based on Foucault's big thing on what was it? Punish and observe or something like that. You should read it. I'm sitting there. I said, well, I'm reading Discipline and Punish. Okay, I'm reading it right now. You should read it. Hey, this is a person who refuses to read. He's got all sorts of stuff to say about his life, but refuses to read the Quran because he says I don't have to read that sort of ignorance. He doesn't know it. He doesn't know the level of it. Maybe there's none. Maybe it's a different type of ignorance than what he thinks. I'm not having someone yip and yap to me. He was also saying to me, what was it? About, oh yeah, who was that idiot who was giving the so-called Rivers of Blood speech? You should read about, what was the name of that guy? It's about 1969, 68, stuff like that. And I'm sitting there thinking, geez, idiot, guy, whomever, I knew more about that dude, and I'm 2.5 years younger than you back in the day. Because when I took social studies back in 1972, just a couple of years after this guy who did the so-called, it was the Tiber flecked with blood, not Rivers of Blood speech. So, what did I get? I got 0% on the Alberta Department. But there was another zero attached to that zero, and there was a 1 in front of those 2 zeros. You know, like, yeah, like I'm going to lecture you about what you should read. And you'd better read better. How much time? 2 minutes?
Yep.
We'll leave it at that. You better read better.